Hey there, it's Kari here. So glad to have you back on season 2 of the podcast. And I'm excited to share a little bit more on this topic of strong to weak, which might seem like an odd title, but glad you're here. Hopefully, I can share some things that will just help you to maybe think about things in a different way and just share what God has done. And speaking of that, we'll definitely have a lot more on that topic in the next episode, which will be episode 3 of season 2. Jenn and I are going to share a really cool story with you all, and just cannot wait to share it, and just so that you can see how good the Lord is and how much He has every detail covered. Truly, I just can't wait. But I mentioned in the last episode, and I know that you have probably seen by now, that there are a lot of changes, a new name, a new co-host, all the things. And honestly, all of those things came out of just trying to be obedient to what God was calling me to do. And really this topic is the same thing. So it's interesting to have a topic like going from strong to weak on a health podcast like this one, right? And so I think that when I think about health, and when I think about how I've pursued health in my own life, over the last probably, really, pursued health 15 to 20 years in my own life. It's interesting how it's gone through ups and downs, certainly. But really, my whole goal was to be strong, right? It was to be strong mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, I just wanted to be strong. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do feel like God has definitely revealed to me that our strengths are not what He can use sometimes, that our weaknesses are what He can always use, because He tells us in His word, His power is made complete in our weaknesses. And so I'm just excited to kind of share with you a little bit more about that, and hopefully encourage you, honestly, in your health and in your walk with the Lord. So, when I think back about my own personal story, that was kind of more or less my goal, is just to become stronger. It was never really like to have a certain, like the way my body looked necessarily, but it was really just to become stronger. And I've seen God definitely just give me that, honestly. Like, even in the last year or so, if I think back to 2023, I felt better than I ever have. I had some digestive issues that, were kind of up and down, but yet had really gotten a lot better. I had gained a lot of muscle. I had kind of been doing a lot more strength training and just really trying to eat enough protein, those types of things. And I just really felt good. Not overboard or anything. I was, at home using hand weights. And so I just felt really good in my body. And as I'll share, Jenn and I will share on the next episode, a lot has happened in the last 2 months. And to be honest, I have not worked out at all since the 1st of November. And it's just so interesting how He took me from, honestly, one of the strongest times that I can remember that I felt physically, to kind of one of the weakest. And so, I just think it's interesting that might be seen as a negative, but I definitely know He has a plan, and see Him wanting to show me that it's not bad to have weaknesses, and we should not always want to, and really focus on being strong within ourselves, right? But if you look and, you're on podcast or social media, or, just so many places, that's the message that you hear, right? It's up to you, and do it for you. And, just all of these things like that are pointing you to yourself, basically. And that, take ownership and all. And these are things that I've definitely said before that I have really encouraged people with before. And again, not that they are all wrong, but I do think that there is a super fine line with wanting to pursue one thing, but leaving out something else. And so, yeah, that's kind of what he showed me, is that for God to use you, for God to use me, we have to stay broken. And that when we surrender over our life, he can really, that's the only time he can use us. And honestly, in that surrender, we do kind of become weak because we realize that we can't do this. And I think that's one of the things that is a really fine line, as far as when you do maybe start, say you had some health condition that was pretty debilitating. A lot of times you don't have a choice but to be dependent on him, because you're like, I literally cannot do this. But whenever we are strong, physically, and we're feeling good about ourselves, we do feel like we can just like conquer the world. But then in Matthew, God tells us we can literally do nothing apart from him. And so there's just this really big tendency to rely on our own strengths and abilities and not seek God every single day and say, God, I cannot do this without you. And that's just kind of what he's shown me, is that I really have to stay broken for him to work through me. And for me, this is definitely a new thing. It's a new territory. I don't know how to do that, but I'm just going to show up every day and say, God, I want to be used by you. So help me to stay broken. Help me to realize that I need you. It's just like whenever we first accept Jesus as our Lord, like we have to admit that we're a sinner in need of a savior. And it's sort of the same thing that we have to keep doing all the time, because we can just go throughout life day to day and just be so focused on what we're doing, what's in front of us. Maybe we're distracted constantly, and we just forget that we have a need for somebody else, right? We can just kind of be really dependent on ourselves. And so that's just one thing that he's shown me. And so I just think it's really interesting, especially in regards to health, how, yes, I'm not saying we should not pursue physical health. Sure, we should, but health is really more encompassed rather than just our physical health anyway, right? It's physical, it can be emotional, mental, spiritual. All those are kind of encompassed in health. And that's really why I feel like God led me to the name Cornerstone Integrative Healing, is because true healing can only come from him. We can pursue health in so many different areas, but true healing can only come from him. And so again, the cornerstone piece, right? We have to build upon him, upon a firm foundation. And so that is something that I hope to tell you guys more about, and just lean more into other aspects of health and healing rather than just physical. Because if you look back on season 1, that's really all we talked about, which again is not a bad thing. And all those things are still there, and they're still true. And there are some times that we really need to look and see what are we doing as far as our habits and our choices, and how is that affecting our health? All of those things are still true, but we have to have the right motive behind it and the right foundation that we're building on. And so one other thing that, in talking about kind of going from strong to weak, is that I really love this passage in 2 Corinthians 12. It's Paul is talking about the thorn in his flesh. And so I'm going to read it. It starts in verse 7. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7. To keep me from being conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given to me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And so he's shown me that, sometimes I'll tell a little bit about maybe what I feel like my thorn in the flesh is, but I see clients that come to me and that they are really struggling physically, and my heart goes out to them because gosh, I want to help. I just want to help them. Right. And sure, there are things that I can tell them to do. There are tests that we can do, that sort of thing. And none of that stuff is wrong. However, if God's put a thorn in our flesh and we keep ignoring it, then it's probably just going to stay there is what I have come to know. It's there for a reason is what I'm saying. And so sometimes he gives us thorns in the flesh that are not physical, but oftentimes I do feel like he gives us thorns in the flesh that are physical things that keep us feeling weak. And I just want you to know, if that's you, if you're really struggling in your health, please know that number one, it's not by accident. And number two, just lean into what he's trying to show you versus wanting it to go away, because that's what our humanness does, right? You just want to feel better. And I've definitely been there. I've never had like a debilitating physical issue, but nonetheless, I do understand that if you don't feel well, if something's going on, your flesh just does want it to go away. But as Christians, we are called to lean into what God is doing. And instead of asking why, maybe we should ask what. What are you trying to show me with this? And so I just want to encourage you with that, if you are struggling physically, that it is there for a reason and that God wants to show you something through it. And so just lean into what he's trying to show you. And instead of asking why, maybe change that to what. And so just a little bit about what he's shown me that my thorn in the flesh is. And it's funny how I look back and think, yeah, he's been showing me this, but it was kind of really apparent to me over the last few weeks is that, and I get that this could probably go for a lot of people, but that comfort is my thorn in the flesh. And comfort in the fact of just in so many different ways, just from the way I was, raised to where I live to just all levels of comfort. That is my thorn in the flesh, because anytime he wants me to do something, I have to, just like we all have to step outside of our comfort zone, but I just keep coming back to that. And like I said, all of our thorns in the flesh are not physical, but we all have one, because he wants us to know that we're dependent on him and we can't build our foundation on anything else. And we can't put our hope in anything else. And that's what we tend to do, is we have all of these, different things in our lives that we do put our worth in and that we do put our faith in and that we just have this big focus in that are not him. And I just, he's shown me that that's really not where he wants us. And so we do have to be willing, though. Like, he wants to work through willing people, right? We have to be willing to surrender what we have to receive what he wants. And so I'm just really thankful that he brought me to a place that I was. And again, I'm excited to share more about that next week. But I think that we have to remember that he's promised to supply us with everything we need. Not everything we want or we feel like we need, but everything we need to be more dependent on him. And so that kind of brings me to my last point. I know this podcast, like I said, has mainly been focused on physical things and how we can sort of invest in our physical health. And that's not a bad thing. I think we should continue to do that. But always remember that our spiritual condition and our spiritual health is more important than our physical health, because that's where everything flows from. He wants our hearts, and he says to guard them because everything flows from there. And so if you came to this podcast looking for help in your health, the one thing I can tell you is really going all in on your spiritual health and working on that will go to every other aspect of your life. It's the best investment you can make. And I am really excited to dig in more to what we're calling and what the integrative portion of the new name of this podcast really means, is that the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of our health are very intertwined. And so we're excited to give you insight into that and give you ways that you can dig deeper. But this right here, for those on the podcast, I'm holding up a Bible. That's our guide, right? Dig into that if you don't know where else to go. Because again, our physical condition is more important than our physical condition. And really, like I said, they're so intertwined. And so I'm excited to share more insights that just in leading that he's given me with you guys, because the last thing I want to do is continue to, post on social media or meet with clients or get on the podcast and talk about only our physical health when I know that doesn't last. We're all going to pass away, right? That's not eternal. And so while I do think that we should take care of ourselves, I think there's way more to it than that. And so I hope you've enjoyed this little chat that's candid chat with you guys, as a lot of things are changing and I'm excited. I'm excited to see where he's leading and the ways that he's revealing himself to me and to hopefully to you guys through me. And so I just pray that we all just look for him and see, look for how he's working. And so you can join him and learn more about him by reading his word and just meditating on that versus so many other things that we can get distracted with and that really want our attention. Like that's the thing that we need to put our attention on the most. And so I'm excited that you're here. Again, the next episode, I'm telling you, it's going to be good. It's going to be so good. So come back for episode 3 and hear an amazing story about what God has done in the last, I would say 2 to 3 months for sure. But really it's been going on for a while. And so I'm excited to share that with you guys. Just really glad that you're here and praying that all of you just seek him. I pray that if you didn't hear anything else, seek him above all else. See you guys on the next episode.